Hey guys, I'm Dan from Borne Off-Road, and today I'm going to walk you through a step-by-step guide of how to install our Bronco direct fit light bars. Our Bronco direct fit light bar kits include a 50-inch or 40-inch light bar with the respective black cover. In the case that you do not have the Upfitter switches, we have our kit with the universal wiring harness, harness extension, the appropriate connectors and shrink tubing, along with 2 note cards showing where the wires need to go on the backs of the switches. These will need to be removed in order to pass through the firewall. We have a drilling fixture to go through the windshield frame. The 40-inch kit uses this set of brackets. The 50-inch kit utilizes this set of brackets. And then in the case that you do have the upfitter switches, we have this wiring harness with its connectors and shrink tubing. Tools needed to complete this install are a 1/4-inch ratchet extension, long array extension, a 7mm socket, 8mm socket, 8mm swivel socket, a 10mm socket, a 14mm deep socket, a T30 Torx, a torque wrench, 5mm Allen key, Phillips head screwdriver, a small flat-headed screwdriver, a panel tool, a box cutter or razor knife, needle nose pliers, side cutters, wire strippers, a Deutsch connector closed barrel terminal crimp tool, masking tape, a metal rod, a solid carbide 7/16 drill bit, a drill, and spray silicone lubricant. Our first step is going to be to remove the ground terminal from the battery. To do this, use a 10mm socket, and we're going to loosen the nut securing the cable in place. Lift this off, and then good practice would be to put something over this terminal to isolate it in the case that this were to accidentally come back and touch it, especially knowing that we're going to be working around the airbag on the passenger side of the vehicle. In this case, I have a piece of rubber that I'm just going to place over the terminal. You can use tape or a piece of hose. Anything will really work here, but it's just to stop this from accidentally contacting the battery. So next we're going to go ahead and remove the expansion tank from its mounting points. We have 2 8mm bolts, and then we have another 8mm bolt down here. Now that we have our fasteners removed, we're going to pull the tank forward, kind of fiddle with it for a sec here just to get it out of this area. Okay, and then we're just going to kind of lay it off to the side here. This is going to give us access down to an area where we can pass the wiring harness through the firewall. So using a razor blade, we're going to cut off a small nub that's sitting on this pass-through grommet right above the vehicle's wiring harness. So we've already cut it here. There would normally be a nub protruding off of this by maybe about a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch. So if you cut that just about flush with this surface, it'll reveal a hole large enough to pass the wiring harness through. So next we need to make an additional cut, this time from the inside of the vehicle on that pass-through grommet on the firewall. So that grommet is going to be located approximately here on the firewall. So basically underneath the glove box on the right-hand side. You'll see where the body harness is coming in through the firewall. Just above that, you'll make a score across it, and that'll allow the wiring to come through. Next, we're going to remove the 4 T30 Torx fasteners securing the handle onto the passenger side of the dash. Next, we're going to remove this trim panel by doing this. Just pull on it. There are 2 clips at the bottom, and then 1 and 1 at the middle and the top. Next, we're going to remove this piece of trim that's sitting right on top of sun visor. So we'll flip the sun visor out of the way, There are 2 metal clips securing this in place. Using a small plastic panel trim tool can help to get these little clips undone. Okay. Next, we're going to remove the 2 8mm fasteners securing this piece of trim on the passenger side. With the 2 fasteners removed, we can pull on this piece of trim and remove it. Okay, so next we're going to remove the airbag cover from the A-pillar trim. To do this, we're just going to pull down on the piece of trim to remove all the little clips. On the back side, there's a 7mm bolt, and that's securing the tether in place to the piece of airbag trim. So we'll remove this bolt, slide the clip off, and then have the trim piece free. So again, we slide this downward, and there's our piece of trim. Okay, next we're going to remove the sun visor. So we're going to unclick the sun visor from its resting position, slide it out. Using a trim tool, we're going to pry the little trim ring down and out of the way to expose a fastener. Go. Okay, we'll slide this guy out of the way. And then we have 1 bolt. Okay, so we'll remove the 8mm bolt, securing the sun visor in place. With the fastener removed, I think we can actually turn this and then rotate it out. Next, we're going to remove the 8mm fastener and tether for the airbag, securing the airbag to the A-pillar. So removing this can take a little bit of wiggling, but so there's a sort of T-shaped arrangement on the end of the tether, and then there's a T-shaped slot that this is positioned inside of. All right, next we're going to remove the 8mm bolt securing the airbag to the upper section of the A-pillar. And then we'll just let the airbag flop down a little bit. Okay, at this point, we're ready to pull the piece of A-pillar trim. So we're going to pull down on the trim, like so. And pull it back, and it's now off the vehicle. So passing wiring through a grommet in the firewall can be a tricky task. What we're going to do is use a piece of rod or wire. Really, you can use just about anything. You just need something like an extension, a pick tool, whatever you have. We're going to pass this from the engine bay side down into the cabin. From there, we'll tape our wiring to the end of it. Once it's secured, we'll pull it back through to get it back into the engine bay. All right, so as stated, we're going to now take the wiring, tape it to the end of our piece of rod, and then once done, we'll proceed with pulling it through the firewall. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just sort of tightly bundle the pins on the end of the wiring. This way I know that those are going to stay together. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and tape that bundle to a little bit of a hook that we put on the end of this piece of rod. Yeah, and that should keep it in place for its journey through the firewall. So now we're going to go ahead and gently start pulling on our piece of wire. Now we'll go ahead and pull our wire the rest of the way through. Now we can leave it, we don't have to pull all the wiring through at the moment. We just want to make sure that it's at least through the firewall, and we can tidy the rest of this up once we're done inside. So for vehicles equipped with Upfitter switches, we're going to cut this piece of tape carefully to give some more slack for these Upfitter wires. And then we're going to clip the ends off of 3 of them and put some of the provided female terminal pins onto them. Okay, so using our razor blade, we'll just carefully cut that electrical tape. That'll give us all the slack we need for those wires. For the light bar, we're going to cut the solid yellow wire, and we're also going to cut the blue wire with orange stripe, which is this guy, blue wire, orange stripe. And then we're also going to cut the yellow wire with orange stripe. First, we're going to strip 1/4 inch of insulation off of the yellow wire. Next, using a number 12 closed barrel terminal tool, we're going to take one of the provided female terminals, slide it into the tool, and then we're going to crimp it onto the end of the yellow wire. Just like that. Next, we're going to strip approximately 1/2 inch of insulation off of both the yellow wire with orange stripe and the blue wire with orange stripe. So now we're going to take our wire, we're just going to twist it up a little bit here on the ends, and then we're going to fold it over approximately halfway down the stripped section of wire. What that's going to do is that's going to add a little bit of thickness to the wire so that we can then place it into our terminal, the provided terminal, and be able to achieve a nice strong crimp. So now we're going to take our yellow wire with orange stripe. We've already twisted up the end of the wire and we've folded it over about halfway down. So we're going to insert our wire into our terminal and then insert the terminal into our tool, and then we're going to go ahead and crimp it in place. We're going to take our provided male plug with ground wire and we're going to insert the blue wire with orange stripe into the number 2 position on the connector. Okay, now we're going to feed it in until we hear an audible click, and it is now locked in. We're going to now do the same with the yellow wire with orange stripe, and we're going to put that into the number 3 location. So we'll feed this in until we hear a click. Okay, and then we'll take our solid yellow wire and we'll feed that into the number 4 position. Okay. So once we've confirmed that all 3 of the new terminals that we added to this connector are locked in place and sitting approximately flush with the inside of this connector, we're going to take the provided wedge lock and install it down into the center of the connector. And it'll click into place. All right, so now using an 8mm socket, we're going to remove the bolt holding the ground strap to the cowl. Okay, then we're going to take our ring terminal from our ground wire and we'll go ahead and feed that through our bolt and then refasten the 8mm bolt down to secure the new ground wire as well as the other ground that was on the vehicle. So now we're going to take our upfitter harness with the male terminals on it, and we're going to insert the wires into the back of the female connector. The black wire will go to position 1, the white wire to position 2, the yellow wire to position 3, and the red wire to position 4. If you're having any trouble feeding the terminals through the back side of the female connector, a small flat bladed screwdriver can be used to help. Just be careful to not damage the wires. And what I'm basically doing is just pushing on the rim of the terminal. Just be careful, obviously, when you're going in blind on the back side here. But yeah, and then you just feed them all in until you hear them click into the connector. Okay, that's that. So now we're going to take the provided wedge lock and we're going to insert that down into the center of the connector. So next we're going to take our Upfitter wiring harness and we're going to route it from the passenger side of the vehicle over to the driver's side of the vehicle by following some of the factory harnesses that go along the back of the firewall. Okay, so and then we can immediately go over here to connect it. Okay, so then now we're going to take our connectors and put them together. Okay, now we're going to secure our Upfitter wire harness in place. All right, so now that we have our wiring run, we're going to go ahead and reinstall the expansion tank. So next we're going to take our wiring and we're going to feed it up along the side of the A-pillar until it comes out into this area here. Okay, so in the case you don't have the Upfitter wiring and you're using our universal wiring harness, first, you're going to remove the two switches from the harness. In this case, we're going to remove the 2-position switch first and tape up these wires so that they don't get confused with the 5 wires that go to the 3-position switch. So there are small detents on each one of these terminals. In some cases, you may need to use a pair of pliers just to depress it so that you can then remove it. Like so. Okay, so we'll set our switch aside. I'm going to use some painter's tape. Again, all I'm looking to do is just group them so that they don't get confused with the wiring for the 3-position switch. Now we can go ahead and remove the wiring for the 3-position switch. So you'll see there's a little detent there. I'm just going to depress and pull for each one of these. Okay, and that's that. So now we're going to take our piece of metal wire and we're going to snake it through the inside of the fender here. Once we get it to about here, we'll go ahead and tape these 2 wires to it and then continue pulling them the rest of the way through. So we'll tape these 2 together first. Massive bundle. And then we'll add this guy into the mix. All right. And that'll do it. Okay. So we're going to take our light bar wiring harness and we're going to feed it from the driver's side over to the passenger side of the vehicle. We're going to snake it basically along the back of the firewall. Okay, once we get it over to this area, we're going to need to feed a piece of metal wire through this hole. We're going to take our metal wire and we're going to run it down into our hole in the grommet, like so. And then we're going to tape our wiring harness to our piece of wire and pull it through. So first we'll tape all the pins together so that they stay together. And now we can go into the vehicle and pull it through. All right. Okay. So now we're going to take the provided connector and we're going to put the black wire into pin 1. We're going to put the red wire into pin 4. The white wire is going to go to pin 2. And then the yellow wire is going to go to pin 3. Okay, and then we're going to push all these wires in firmly until they lock in place. Okay, so then once we have all of our wires in, we can take the wedge, put that into the connector, like so, and that will lock all of our pins firmly in place. Okay, now we're going to take our harness extension and connect it to our universal lighting harness. All right, now we're going to take the other end of our extension harness and we're going to route it up from the passenger side footwell along the A-pillar. We're going to come out right in this area. Okay. All right, next we're going to secure our light bar wiring harness to the vehicle's harness along the firewall. Okay, so now we're going to put our expansion tank back in place. All right, so next we need to pass our switch wiring harness through the driver's side of the firewall. On this vehicle, we're going to go ahead and use an existing grommet that's sitting next to the brake booster. You may have to find an alternative location to get through the firewall depending on the options that you have on your vehicle. Okay, so I'm just going to wiggle this up to there. So on this vehicle, there is already one wiring harness going through this grommet, so I'm going to use a pair of snips to just create a slightly larger opening. Had there not been something going through here, you could simply drill a hole in this grommet to then pass the wiring through. Okay, so we've got a little bit of a bigger opening. So we'll start with the wires that are all taped up. Okay, and we'll pass the other individual wires through. Okay, so now we've got that fed most of the way through. Now we're going to take our switch harness and pass it through the hole. Okay, now we're going to work our grommet back towards the firewall. This way it's in a good position to be able to be reinserted into the firewall. Okay, like that. So for this install, we're going to use our direct fit switch panel for the Bronco to mount our light bar switches. First step we're going to do for this is we're going to pop out a couple of these panel plugs to give us access for the 2-position and 3-position switches that we're going to install. So now we're going to take our wiring harness and we're going to feed it up onto the dash to get it out into this center console area. All right, so I'm just pulling these out this way first, make it a little bit easier on myself. Now that I have some slack here, I'm going to work these over here. So now we're going to take our 5 wires for the 3-position switch and we're going to feed them through the switch opening. Okay, so then we're going to take our 3-position switch note card. This way we know which one goes where. So let's see, we have 1 red wire going to the number 2 position. So that is right here. And we have another red wire going to the number 5 position. Okay, and then our white wire is going to the number 6. Yellow to number 4. And then the black wire is going to number 7. Okay, so, and then we'll leave this switch like this for now. If we were to put this fully into the panel, it's going to push our 2-position switch harness back with it, and we still need this amount of slack to be able to connect that switch. So now we can go ahead and remove the tape from those 3 wires that we bundled earlier. Now we're going to take our 2-position switch note card and we're going to feed the wires up through the 2nd switch hole. So then we're going to take the black wire and put that at position 8, which should be that one. And take the red wire, position 2, blue wire, position 3, and that's that. Okay, so now we can slide both of these switches back into the panel. Okay, and you just want to go back until the backing plate of the switch is pressed up against the switch panel. Yep. Okay. So now we're going to take the remaining bit of harness that we have sitting down in the footwell of the driver's seat. We're going to take this, bundle it up, and secure it out of the way of the pedals, steering column, or anything else that it could potentially rub on. So first I'm just going to take some of this excess, get into a bit of a bundle. And I'm going to take that entire bundle and find a place to shove it. Okay, now we're going to remove the painted covers that are covering up the mounting points for the light bars. So there's a little tab on the back side, so you can either potentially get it with your finger, or you may need to use a panel tool to simply depress that little button and then pop it up. Okay, once the cover is removed, remove the two 10mm nuts. With the two nuts removed, you can remove the mounting plate. Okay, now we're going to do the same to the other side. Next, we're going to take our bracket for our 50-inch light bar and our beauty cover, and we're going to put them together. So the bracket itself will slide into two slots on the side of the beauty cover. So you want to push these together until the hole in the metal bracket is sitting approximately centered in the rubber beauty cover. Take two of the provided 10mm nuts, drop one into each of the holes. Make sure that the hex is sitting upwards so that you can fasten it in place. This will just make things easier to get started once you put the bracket on the windshield frame. So now we're going to go ahead and put this bracket assembly onto the windshield frame, and then we'll go ahead and we'll snug down the two 10mm nuts. Okay, once snug down, take two of the provided rubber plugs. You'll see that there's a small band on one side of the plug. That is the bottom of the plug. That allows it to seat correctly at the right height into the beauty cover. So take these, press them down into the beauty cover, and you should feel them come to a stop when they're approximately flush. Now we're going to take our 50-inch light bar and we're going to lay it up onto the roof. This is going to allow us to work with the end of the harness that needs to get put through the beauty cover and bracket assembly. And then once it's through that, it's going to have to go through the hole that we've previously drilled into the windshield frame. To give you guys a better view of what we're doing, we're going to give you a bit of a close-up here. So we're going to take some electrical tape and we're going to start wrapping around the harness coming off of the light bar. What we're doing is we're going to do this so we can group the pins together to make a nice little bundle to be able to pass it through our beauty cover. Okay, so we end up with a nice little bundle of all of our pins wrapped up, which will make it very easy to then pass through our beauty cover. Now we're going to take our 50-inch light bar passenger side bracket and assemble it to our beauty cover. Once it's assembled, just make sure that again the holes in the bracket are centered with the holes on the beauty cover. So next we're going to take a paper towel with some silicone lubricant, and we're just going to apply some of that to our light bar wiring harness. This will make it a little bit easier to slip through the beauty cover. All right, so now having applied some silicone lubricant to our light bar harness, we're going to feed the harness through the beauty cover. Once the wire is through the beauty cover, you can go ahead and remove the electrical tape. So now next, we're going to take the harness that we just pulled through the beauty cover, and we're going to feed it down through the hole that we've drilled into the windshield frame. Okay, now that we have this the beauty cover resting onto the windshield frame, we're going to just loosely install these two nuts. This way we can keep a little bit of ability to move this so that we can get the wiring harness down to where it needs to be. Using two of the provided 10mm nuts, place one into each of the holes. And loosely thread these on. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and snug these two nuts down, and then afterwards we'll put the covers on. Okay, now we're going to install the remaining rubber plugs into the beauty covers. Okay, next we're going to take one of our button head bolts and one of our fastener caps, put them together, and then we're just going to catch it a couple of threads into it for the side on the driver's side, and then we'll do the same on the passenger side. Okay, we're going to do the same thing on the passenger side. One button head bolt, one fastener cap, and we're going to just loosely thread it in to the side of the light bar. Okay, and then from there, we're now going to flip the light bar over and drop it into the two mounts. So now we're going to go ahead and tighten down these two button head bolts, keeping an eye on the front face of the light bar and lining it up with the front of the bracket. That'll ensure that the light is level. Okay, once tightened, we can snap the little cap for the fastener. So now we'll go to the other side. So now, just like what we did on the passenger side, we're going to go ahead and tighten down the button head bolt and then snap over the fastener cap. If you have a little bit of wire still sitting above the light bar, you can manipulate and draw that down into the windshield frame just by gently pulling on the harness from inside the vehicle. You just want to make sure you don't have it too taut to where it's straining on where the cable is coming out of the back of the light. For those of you installing our 40-inch light bar kit, here's the driver's side 40-inch bracket. We're going to take our beauty cover and we're going to slide the bracket into the beauty cover. Again, being sure that the holes on the bracket are centered on the beauty cover holes. I'm going to take two 10mm nuts that are provided with the kit, and we're going to drop them into the holes, making sure that the hex nut is still sitting up so we can be able to tighten it down. And now we'll go ahead and install it up on the windshield frame. Okay, with the bracket installed, we can now insert two of the plugs into the beauty cover. Okay, so just like we did on the 50-inch light bar install, we're going to take our wiring harness from the 40-inch light bar, we're going to wrap it in some electrical tape, and again, that's going to help us group all these pins together to make it into a nice, neat single strand to go through the beauty cover. So we're going to start out by first applying some silicone lubricant to that taped area as well as the harness. Now we can take our harness and we can pass it through the grommet on the passenger side 40-inch light bar bracket, like so. Next, we're going to take our beauty cover and we're going to feed the harness through the beauty cover. Once we have our harness through the beauty cover, we can now take our beauty cover and attach it to our passenger side bracket. Okay, once we have this installed, again, we want to check to make sure that the mounting holes on the bracket are centered on the holes in the beauty cover. Once completed, we can go ahead and remove the electrical tape. Okay, then we're going to take the end of our wiring harness and we're going to fit it through the windshield frame. Okay, then take 2 of the provided 10mm nuts and drop them into the holes on the beauty cover, being sure to keep the hex facing upwards. Okay, now we're going to install the remaining rubber plugs into the beauty covers. All right, so now we're going to take one of our provided button head bolts and put it through our fastener cover. Like that. Okay, we're going to take the remaining button head bolt and remaining cap, put the 2 together, and we're going to loosely install it into the passenger side of the light bar. And now we're going to go ahead and put the light bar into the 2 brackets. Okay, so you might need to pull on the bracket a little bit, and then it'll slide right in. Okay, now we're going to line up the front face of the light bar with the front edge of the bracket, and that'll ensure that it's level. Okay, we'll do the other side. Okay, now we're going to tighten the button head bolt on the driver's side. Okay, then we can put the cap in place. Okay, now from inside the vehicle, you can pull down gently on the harness to tidy things up a little bit. Just be mindful that we don't want to have any strain happening where the harness comes out of the back of the light bar. Right about there should be nice. Okay, we're going to take our wire plug seal, place it into the back of the connector. We're going to take our black wire, fit it into pin 1, position 1. Our white wire is going to go into position 2. Yellow into position 3. Red into position 4. Once they're all placed into the plug seal, you can proceed with pushing all of the pins fully into the connector. Okay, so now we're going to take our wedge lock, a pair of needle nose pliers, and we're going to place that into the connector. That's going to now secure the pins in place. For added protection, we also did include a piece of 1-inch shrink tubing that is adhesive lined. If you would like to, you can first slide that piece of shrink tubing on to the wire harness, then put the connector on, then you would slide that back over the harness connector and use a heat gun to shrink that down. So now we're going to take our wiring harness and connect it to the light bar harness. Feed any excess wire back down along the A-pillar. We're going to have our wire harness sit up something like that. Be behind the cover. So now we're going to take our A-pillar plastic cover and we are going to place it back onto the A-pillar. Okay, now we're going to reinstall the 8mm bolt that's securing the airbag up towards the top of the A-pillar. Okay, once you have it snugged down, we're going to torque it to 80 inch-pounds. Okay, next we're going to reinstall the tether holding the airbag to the A-pillar. And the bolt securing the tether in place is an 8mm. Now that we have that snug, we're going to torque it to 80 inch-pounds. Next, we're going to reconnect the tether to the A-pillar airbag cover. Okay, this just gets snugged down. Once the tether's in place, you can put the A-pillar airbag cover back up. So now we're going to reinstall our sun visor. So to do that, we're going to put the little hook end of it up into the hole first. Then we're going to rotate it and then put the fastener up. So at first we're going to hook that up into it. So now we're going to reinstall the fastener for the sun visor. So now that we have that up, we can pop this little cover back on. Okay, like so. And we can, all right, now we can put up the remaining airbag cover. First you gotta slide it under the B-pillar area. And then we can reinstall the 8mm bolts that's secured in place. And using a ratchet, we'll snug these guys down. Okay, next we'll reinstall the little cover that goes near the latches for the roof. All right, now we're going to reinstall the trim panel that sits on the side of the dashboard. So the area that has two clips faces downward. Okay, so now we can reinstall the handle to the side of the dashboard. And this is T30 Torx. Okay, so now that we finished up inside the vehicle, we need to find a place to mount our relay. And then after that, we'd be securing our wires in place. One for the positive terminal of the battery, one for the negative. In this case, we're going to use our Bronco Direct Fit relay holder, and we're also going to use our Bronco Direct Fit bus bar kit. First, we'll take our 10mm bolt and secure our relay to our relay bracket. Okay, then we're going to remove covers for our bus bar kit. Okay, so using a 14mm socket, I'm going to loosen one of the terminals on both the ground and positive bus bars. Okay, so then now we're going to take our wires, we'll run them down along the side here. So we have our negative, put our washer back on, and our nut, and then we have our positive, put that on. We'll put our washer and our nut. Okay, and we'll go ahead and tighten that back down. Then we'll put our bus bar covers back in place. Okay, that's that. Now we're going to remove our insulation material that we had on the negative post on the battery. All right, so now we're going to reattach our ground cable to the battery. And then we'll tighten it up with a 10mm socket. Okay. That wraps up our installation of our Bronco direct fit light bar. You can find our light bars and other lighting products at borne.com. Make sure you subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on future videos. Thanks for watching.